The Adventures of Feluda by Satyajit Ray. The Mystery of the Walking Dead, Part 2. Mr. Mullik's house was clearly quite old, but had been well maintained. It was large enough to be called a mansion, if not a palace. As we passed through the front gate, I saw a pond to our right. A number of trees behind the house suggested a garden. Only the compound wall did not appear to have been repaired for some time. It was broken in many places, showing gaps. Seedlings had grown through large cracks in it. A guard stood at the gate, clutching a shield and a spear, looking as if he was dressed for a part in a historical play. A bearer, wearing an old-fashioned uniform and looking just as peculiar, gave us a smart salute at the front door. It was all done seriously, and certainly the atmosphere inside the house was far from light-hearted. But both men looked so comical that I almost burst out laughing. We were taken into the living room. It had no furniture. A mattress covered with a spotless sheet was spread on the floor. We went and sat on it. There were a few pictures on the wall of Hindu gods and goddesses and scenes from the Ramayana. There were bookshelves on the wall, but apart from half a dozen books in Bengali, they were empty. "Would you like the fan? If so, I can ask Dashu to pull it for you," Jivanlal said. I had not noticed it at first, but now I glanced up and saw the fan. Two mats edged with large frills hanging from an iron rod. The rod hung from two hooks fixed to the ceiling. A rope tied to the rod went outside to the veranda through the wall over the door to our left. I had only read about such fans. The servant called Dashu presumably sat on the veranda and pulled the rope so that the fan swung from side to side, creating a breeze. But it was an October evening. None of us needed a fan. "Let me show you something. Can you tell me what this is?" said Jivanlal, opening a cupboard and taking out a square piece of cloth. What made it special was that one corner was knotted around a small stone. Feluda frowned, then swung the cloth a few times in the air. "Topshe, stand up for a minute." I rose. Feluda stood a few feet away from me, swinging the cloth once more. Then he threw it at me as though it was a fishing net. The end that was knotted around the stone wound itself round my neck instantly. "Thuggy!" I cried. Feluda had told me about thuggies. They were bandits who used to attack travellers in this fashion and then loot their possessions. One swift pull was usually enough to tighten the noose and kill their innocent victims. Feluda nodded, took the cloth away and asked, "Where did you get something like this?" "Someone threw it into my father's room through an open window in the middle of the night." "When?" "A few days before I got here." "What were the guards doing?" "Guards," Jivanlal laughed. "They like dressing up to please their master, but that's as far as it goes. They are bone idle, each one of them. Besides, they know their master has become quite senile, and there's really no one to control them." "Who else lives here?" "My grandmother. She is perfectly happy with these old-fashioned arrangements. Then there's Bholanath Babu. He is a sort of manager. In fact, he takes care of everything from shopping to running errands for my father, fetching the doctor if need be, going to the next town to get things we can't get in the village. Everything. There is no one else except a cook, two guards and a bearer. They live here. The four bearers for the palanquin and the pankha puller come from the village." "Where did Bholanath Babu come from?" "He is from this village. His family were our tenants. His forefathers were farmers. But he went to school and I believe was quite bright as a student. Now he is nearly 60. "Is that your grandfather?" Feluda asked, pointing at a painting on the wall. It was the portrait of a man with an impressive moustache. I had not noticed it so far. He was sitting on a chair holding a walking stick with a silver handle in one hand, the other resting on a marble table. The look in his eyes was cold and hard. "Yes, that is Durlabh Singh Malik." The zamindar everyone was terrified of? Yes, I'm afraid so. He was devoid of compassion or mercy. A bearer brought 2 glasses and a cup on a saucer on a tray and placed the tray before us. Feluda glanced at the hot drink they contained and said, "Does this mean your father still drinks tea?" "No, no, that's coffee and it's mine. I always bring a cup and a tin of Nescafe. He couldn't find other cups and saucers, so you have been given glasses. I hope you don't mind." "No, of course not. I've drunk coffee out of bronze glasses in South India." A loud tapping noise coming from upstairs made Feluda glance up. "Does your father wear clogs?" "Oh, yes. Isn't that far more natural than wearing shoes?" "Yes, I suppose so. Tell me, was it just this piece of cloth that made you think someone was planning to kill your father, or was there something else?" In reply, Jivanlal simply took out a piece of paper from his pocket and offered it to Feluda. Written on it, in pencil with large distinct letters, were the following words: "You have been given a death sentence to atone for your ancestors' sins. Be prepared to die." This came on 5th October, the day before I got here. It had been posted in Katwa, which doesn't really tell us anything, for anyone from Goshaipur could have gone there and posted it. If you don't mind, can you tell us what ancestor scenes might mean? Well, as I told you before, Mr. Mitra, my grandfather treated his tenants very badly. I have no idea which particular crime has been referred to. Why didn't you go to the police? There were 2 reasons, Jivanlal said. 1. People here would not recognize you. So hopefully whoever wrote that note would feel no need to be on his guard. 2. If I called the police, I would have been their prime suspect. Feluda and I both looked at him in surprise. Jivanlal explained quickly. Everyone knows I have not been able to get on with my father ever since this change came over him. I still live in the city. I find it impossible to do without certain modern amenities. I admit, what happened to my father gave him more than just a physical shock. It also caused him great mental trauma. What really happened was that he and I returned together one evening and stepped into our living room, which was dark. My father groped for the switchboard and received a shock from a live wire. I ran out and switched the mains off in 5 seconds, but for some reason he got the impression that I did not act quickly enough. This happened 5 years ago, but since that incident he has stopped trusting me. We have violent arguments sometimes. Once I lost my temper and threw a burning kerosene lamp on a mattress, which naturally caught fire, and then there was hell to pay. The news spread and everyone started to think I disliked my father intensely. That's the reason why I did not call the police. Besides, I knew of your reputation and how well you had handled your previous cases, so I thought you were the best person to turn to. We finished our coffee. The same bearer brought an oil lamp and put it down in a corner. "Would you like to meet my father?" Jivanlal asked. "Yes, I ought to." We rose and made our way upstairs. The few lamps and lanterns the servants had lit had done nothing to illuminate the staircase. In fact, most of the house was in darkness. Jivanlal took out a small torch from his pocket and said even this had to be smuggled in secretly. He hates torches. We found Shyamlal Malik seated on a mattress, clutching the pipe of his hookah and leaning against a bolster. His face bore a marked resemblance to that of his father. If he grew a thick moustache, he would probably look stern like Durlabh Singh. When he spoke, I could tell that if he ever got angry and raised his voice, one might do well to stay away from him. "You may go now," he said in his deep voice. The person he addressed was sitting on one corner of the mattress. Jivanlal introduced him as Taruk Kobiraj, the Ayurvedic doctor. He got to his feet and greeted us, but left immediately. "What the hell is a detective going to do?" asked Shyamlal Malik as soon as Feluda had been introduced. He sounded extremely annoyed. "Durlabh Singh's soul has already told me my enemy is in my own house. I have that written on a piece of paper." A departed soul can see it all. No one can hide the truth from it. What more can a detective from the city do for me?" Jivanlal looked profoundly startled. He obviously did not know anything about Durlabh Singh's soul. "Did you go to Mriganka Bhattacharya's house?" he asked. "No, why should I have gone to him?" his father barked. "He came to me. I called him. I had to know who was trying to cause me such distress. Now I do." "When did he visit you?" "The day before you came." "You did not tell me." Shamlal Malik made no reply. He began smoking. "May we see what Durlabh Singh told you?" Feluda asked politely. Shamlal Malik stopped smoking and glared at him. "How old are you?" he asked abruptly. Feluda told him. "I am amazed," the old man announced, "by your impertinence. Do you really think you'd understand the spiritual significance of a departed soul writing a message? Is that something to be shown to all and sundry?" "Please forgive me," Feluda said gently. "All I want to know is whether your dead father told you how you might get out of your present difficulties." "I could tell you what he said. There's no need to look at the writing. He simply said there was only one thing to be done: get rid of the enemy." For a few minutes none of us could speak. Then Jivanlal said slowly, "You are asking me to go away? When did I ever ask you to come here?" Jivanlal refused to give up. "Baba," he said, "you have begun to trust Bholanath Babu much more than you trust me. Have you forgotten his family history? Durlabh Singh's men had gone and set fire to his house because his father had failed to pay the rent on time, and—" "Fool!" Shamlal Malik shouted. "Bholanath was only a small child at the time. Are you suggesting that he has waited almost 60 years to plan his revenge? How absurd can you get?" At this point we decided to leave. "Let me take you back," Jivanlal offered. "I don't think you can manage the shortcut in the dark." As we came out of the house, he added, "I had no idea he would insult you like that. I'm terribly sorry." "Don't be," Feluda replied. "The first thing a detective learns to grow is a thick skin. I am used to handling slights and insults. It is you I am more concerned about. You must realize one thing, Jivan Babu. Suspicion is more likely to fall on you because that anonymous letter points at Bholanath. But when that cloth and the note arrived, I was in Calcutta, Mr. Mitra. So what? How do I know you haven't got an accomplice here in Goshaipur? Even you are turning against me." Jivanlal sounded deeply distressed. "No. Right now, Jivan Babu, I am not flinging accusations at anyone, nor am I making assumptions about anyone's innocence. But I must ask you something. What kind of a man is Bholanath Babu?" After a moment's silence, Jivanlal replied, "Very reliable and trustworthy. I have to admit that. But that's no reason to suspect me, surely." He sounded a little desperate. Feluda raised a hand. "Jivan Babu," he said soothingly, "you must appreciate my position. I have to assess the whole situation objectively and impartially. You will simply have to be patient. Neither you nor I have a choice in the matter. We must wait until I learn the truth. The only thing I can promise you is that I will definitely protect whoever is innocent." Jivanlal did not reply. It was impossible to see his face in the dark and tell whether Feluda's words had reassured him. Feluda asked him something else as we emerged from the bamboo grove. "Does your father ever walk barefoot outside the house?" "Outside the house? Never. Why, he doesn't take off his clogs even inside the house. Why do you ask?" "I thought I saw traces of mud on his feet. And doesn't he use a mosquito net?" "Of course, everyone here uses mosquito nets. They have to. Perhaps you have not noticed it, but his face, neck and arms were covered with mosquito bites." "Really? No, I hadn't noticed. It's strange because he certainly uses a net." "Then perhaps the net is torn. Could you please check?"